Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I don't know if you can hear me because it's a very virtual um, seminar or panel in our case. I'm happy to introduce our panelists on this forum, Jim Walters, Professor Massimo, and I should say that this is an international panel with Jim coming all the way from the UK, virtually, of course, and then Massimo from Italy. Itamar Yona from Israel, and myself, Amit, also from Israel. On this panel, we're going to discuss the interaction and the impact of the 3D printing industry as part of the Industry 4.0 revolution, I think we could say. And in the coming hour, I hope we're going to be interesting and useful to you. We will start the panel by a short introduction of each of the participants, and I believe some of us come with a few slides. Following that, we're going to have a panel, and anyone that has questions is actually welcome to send them through the interface. And I cannot promise we will reach all questions, but we will definitely dedicate a few minutes at the end to Q&A. So, with no further delay, Jim, if you could please introduce your activity. But unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you very much, Amit. I'd just like to say thank you very much indeed for being invited. It's a great privilege to be on this panel with you all. I'm just about to share my screen now. Okay, hopefully, can everyone see that?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Okay, so my name, as Amit said, is Jim Walters. I'm Managing Director of DNA AM. We're part of the value chain group of companies here in the UK with sites in the UK, India, and China. Why are we here? Well, today I'm here to explain that we specialize in manufacturing execution systems for additive manufacturing or 3D printing across all sectors in industry, and from small SMEs right the way through to OEM service providers. So what do we do? And how do we connect digitally and work in the realms of Industry 4.0 as you may understand it? So you will see here, value chain as a group, what we're about is digitizing the whole end-to-end additive manufacturing ecosystem. And our aims in utilizing the various different tools and applications that we have with our clients is to connect and visualize multi-tier supply chains, use and embed artificial intelligence to interpret that, and to then utilize that knowledge to streamline and standardize best practices in terms of additive manufacturing or 3D manufacturing. And why is that? Because of the drive to reduce risk and optimize performance. A little overview here about us and how this all links together. So this is our group of companies. So organizations come in different sizes with different core competences, with different history and different knowledge, and obviously different capacity requirements in terms of financial constraints. Hence, modular solutions are required to be able to plug in and interconnect different items of technology, potentially as companies grow or as they ramp up production, let's say from R&D into full production. And I just point you to the fact that we have Industry 4.0 enabling MRP, ERP, MES solutions. We have bolt-on smart factory business intelligence solutions. And we have to the right our additive manufacturing specific solution. And this is all to aid scalability in additive manufacturing or 3D printing. So there are many solutions out in the marketplace that do varying parts of what is required in digitizing the additive manufacturing or 3D printing ecosystem. To explain to anyone in our audience who wonders what the challenges may be, I would say this. Personally speaking, I'm a dinosaur. I come from the days when reductive machining was the way forward. But now here I am now working in additive manufacturing. And I say that because reductive machining has 100 years of proven expertise and proven knowledge in trace and traceability of materials, particularly in advanced manufacturing, but in manufacturing per se across all sectors. Additive manufacturing and 3D printing presents new challenges, and those new challenges are particularly around materials and materials tracing. So DNA AM, which is our solution, manages the whole additive manufacturing build and planning and provides complete material traceability. Importantly, it can be used in conjunction with other ranges and our range of MES, production control, and other applications at the front end and at the end process of additive manufacturing. So what are the challenges and risks in additive manufacturing? And why are we involved in this? And the answer is to de-risk that process and simplify manufacturing compliance digitally. So just briefly, things like scheduling and capacity planning, collecting data on the shop floor, subcontract control, advanced business reporting. I won't read all of those out to you, but certainly in terms of the traceability of materials and powders and consumables, then DNA AM is at the forefront of that technology. So what are the key areas of concern and what challenges does additive manufacturing solve? So additive manufacturing on its own will solve some challenges in manufacturing, but importantly, it needs to coexist and integrate specifically and seamlessly with other parts of the manufacturing process for additive manufacturing to become the success that we all want it to be. So lots of people currently are in R&D, and some people are trying to make that jump from R&D into full-on production manufacturing. When they do move into full-on production manufacturing, there are many things that need to be addressed. I'd point out the highlights, which are things like visible materials traceability, the splitting and blending of materials, the whole chemical analysis of materials from raw material through parts production into the subcontract areas of manufacturing and then onto the end user. Things like tolerance and grades of material need very, very strict control. With additive manufacturing, it's very different to reductive manufacturing. And to produce an end-to-end digital trail through the whole manufacturing ecosystem. And they're the features that DNA AM address. So our goal is to connect and digitize the whole manufacturing ecosystem in additive manufacturing, to provide full material traceability, as you see, to standardize management, not just build management, to control both internal and external processes within the same ecosystem, and to provide analytics and digital analytics, which will provide better analytical conclusions because you have data, and primarily data in one place. So again, just to summarize, the drive is to digitize the whole ecosystem, to be able to integrate with other IT and other solutions across the whole manufacturing sector, and to provide the capability to digitally trace the whole manufacturing process and have that data available for analysis to your engineers so that everyone can improve on what we're currently doing and to drive forward to the next generation. So that's me. And I'd just like to say thank you very much. And thank you, Amit.
Perfect, Jim. Thank you very much. And with no delay, we will move to Itamar that can probably complete some of the things you just presented from his angle. Please, Itamar, go ahead.
Thank you. 1 second. I will share the screen. Can you see my screen? Super. So everyone, thank you for having me here today. I'm excited to participate on this event. Even though it's digitally, I'm still feeling your presence here worldwide, and I recognize some of the names that already attended to this panel, so thank you for coming. My name is Itamar Yona. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Princess. We are developing an AI software solution which automates the 3D printing workflow. We are a young startup company based in Israel, and our team is a great combination of industry veterans and leading AI researchers. Our unique technology already recognized and approved by multiple strategic partnerships, including international consortium and also strategic partnership with value changes, with Jim that just elaborate about his solutions. So as you probably know, the industrial sectors are evolving. Industries such as aerospace, automotive, and defense, and medical, of course, are adopting 3D printing in large scale, more ever than before. We're seeing more applications, whether are coming from interior cabinets, components, and even mission critical parts, such as engine parts, jigs, tools, and more. And as far as you're moving with the production processes, you see that the ability to create complex parts in highly regulated industries becoming much more complicated. And unfortunately, pre-printing processes are not like one click on the mouse, it's more like right click on God save us all, because it consists many parameters and many environment conditions that you need to take in your consideration. And this is something that is actually become an obstacle or a barrier for wide adoption. And we see actually this period of time we are actually enduring a perfect storm. We see, as I mentioned, maturity of 3D print technology and also computing power to become much more affordable and accessible. And together with COVID-19, that create a new awareness for additive manufacturing solutions, we see that as a huge opportunity for software solutions like Princess suggests. So, as mentioned, 3D printing processes are complicated and we make it easy. And this is where Princess comes in. We developed an AI engine which knows to understand what is the intent behind the digital part and act upon it. We understand what is the relevant performance that the part should meet. And we know to identify or to guess using our AI engine what will be the optimal printing parameters accordingly, and specifically reflected in a very easy to use interface, almost a control P. So Princess allow pre-printing automation. We know to reduce this process that is taking many hours and efforts and required expertise and skills. And we know to reduce that from process that taking something like 30 minutes into a few seconds, and the cost that we are reducing that process are dramatically. So we are using all the capabilities of AI, which allow us to be very scalable. We know to adopt the flavors of our operators. It's SaaS solution, so the risk is free. It's almost 1 to 3 user interface. You not get the better surprises. We know to verify that you will be able to print parts in consistent, in reliable way. And this is it for my end.
Thank you, Itamar. it's definitely one of the challenges, I would say, of the AM, the additively manufactured industry, to merge and to scale up into the real world of production, uh, to overcome the challenges that you mentioned. And just before I'm going to ask Professor Massimo to come with his inspiring story, I will take the next 3-4 minutes to give some background on myself and Nano Dimension. And I think that's going to be a good build up for Massimo when he presents some of his interesting ideas. So allow me to share my screen. And kindly just nod with your head or something to let me know you got it and you can see it properly. You can, very good. So my name is Amit Dror. I'm a co-founder and currently the chief of customer success at Nano Dimension. Nano Dimension is a tech company that develop and we're currently selling industrial machines, very large 3D printers and nanomaterials, which together are enablers for our customers to 3D print electronic components, such as antennas, complex PCBs, packaging of ICs, and more. Okay, the idea of taking 3D printing into the world of electronics is pretty much to take a whole factory, and those of you who are familiar with elements related to PCB and electronics manufacturing know that you have fabs and you have factories. We take all that and we put it into a single machine in a pretty much single manufacturing step. That makes it much more flexible and agile, and it fits the new concept of Industry 4.0, where processes of digital products and digital processes can be more agile and more suitable for today's needs. I would say that there are at least 3 advantages in the world of additive manufacturing, and specifically with AME, additively manufactured for electronics, that impact Industry 4.0. One is that it comes to support the manufacture per demand. You don't have to keep a stock. You can just print the part that you want whenever you need them. The second element is the support of distributed manufacturing, especially in the world of electronics. Pretty much everything is manufactured in Taiwan, China, and we saw during 2020 how when China was pretty much shut down during the first quarantine, the beginning of the year, how the electronics industry got into distress without ability to support manufacturing and distribution. And the third element where AME and AM in general support Industry 4.0 is the increase of the effectiveness of digital manufacturing. Because with 3D printing, the parts are manufactured with less manufacturing step. It means that if you have in your home or factory the capability to manufacture something by 3D printing, you can control it digitally. And that definitely aligns with part of the concepts of Industry 4.0. So very quickly, and I'm not going to spend more than a few seconds, I would just say, so how does it work? How can we 3D print electronics? Well, instead of all the different elements which are normally used in a factory, we just have 2 materials. One of them is nanomaterial, and we print them, we jet them. We just build the layers one on top of the other, as simple as that. But it's not so simple, to be honest. I put here a few samples of components that can be created with AME, basically 3D printed. You can see that they are layered. We call them HiPads, high performance electronic devices. You can see that it includes circuits, coils, RF antennas, and all sorts of other electromechanical parts. you can see in the following slide that we also bring in advantages related to shape. I mean, function, but also shape. Normally, electronics, especially circuit boards, are pretty flat. With 3D printing, we can do more. You can see the different types of coils, and obviously that could be implemented as sensors, antennas, and all kinds of other components. Here's another very unique case of a phased array antenna for high frequency. You can see the X-ray, and then on the left, you can see the actual device. Check out how there are small, tiny elements, coil-like elements, which are pretty much the array of the antenna. But with that, I'm going to conclude just by saying that one of the disadvantages of additive manufacturing in general, and also AME, is that at the moment, when we think about throughput and capacity, it's all a bit limited. When in the world of consumers, customers, companies wish to produce something at quantities of millions, they're not going to go with 3D printing. They're going to figure out their more of a traditional manufacturing way. Having said that, additive manufacturing and additive manufacturing for electronics at the moment see higher demand in the fields of aerospace, defense, medical, some automotive as well. And of course, it all goes very strongly in all aspects of research and prototyping. So that was my quick introduction, I hope. And with that, I'm going to ask Professor Massimo from the Italian Institute of Technology to come and present his slides. Massimo?
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Amit. I will try to share my screen. So first of all, let me thanks all the organizers. It's a pleasure and honor to be here in this panel, in this event. I will give you a different perspective. I'm the director of a research center, the Center for Biomolecular Nanotechnologies, which is a center down here in Lecce, southeast of Italy, where we develop a number of micro and nano technologies for different applications, mostly in the recent years for studying for life science and health. In particular, today I'm going to talk to you about the potential of 3D printing for our technologies, for micro and nano fabrication or integration of heterogeneous technologies and sensors. And we are working in the last years, months, let's say, on health sensors. Do you see my arrow? Good. Just let me show the typical laboratories, research laboratories that we have in our center in these videos. We have many hundreds of square meters of labs, clean room technologies for micro and nano fabrication. And so this is the typical way of producing micro and nano electronic sensors, photonic sensors. However, the world is changing also in our field, and there is a convergence of different technologies and new technologies such as 3D printing, especially 3D printing for electronics, such as the nano dimension tools, are getting more and more important and interesting in our community, in our field. So our center is actually more involved in the wearable technologies, tattooable, even edible technologies for the body, for the skin electronics. And we also have neural probes. The point that I want to stress is that whatever we do, we always try to put on market the results of our research. And for going very high in maturity of our technology, in TRL, technology readiness level, you need actually to package to embed the sensors into a system, electronic system, and by exploiting 3D printing, additional manufacturing, we are able to do that. So, or at least we are really going in the right direction in producing something very, very interesting. So today, let me show you what is the paradigm, the new paradigm that we are pursuing. So the idea is that our body will be more and more sensorized in the next year, and we are actually developing in the recent years and in the next years technologies to shift the paradigm from sick care to health care. So the diagnostic, the real-time diagnostic on our body is something very difficult. And producing sensors for the human body requires not just traditional microelectronic technologies such as silicon-based integrated circuits or sensors. Requires heterogeneous technologies. Heterogeneous, I mean heterogeneous in terms of materials, in terms of architectures, in terms of functions, in terms of applications that we are facing for instance, for the body, we need compliance, we need biocompatibility, which is something that traditional micro and nanotechnologies cannot give. So this is why, for instance, I just want to share with you the approach that we have. We normally want to have sensors for being put on the skin to monitor our body in real time, so that we are aware of something going wrong in the body very early. These data, collected data, are analyzed by artificial intelligence, by grouping in machine learning, and at the end we will have technologies on the body which will react in real time to something going wrong by delivering a drug, or by just I don't know, controlling the brain or the body. And let me show you a couple of applications that we are developing in our center. Together, we launched a startup called PiezoSkin. They produced ultra flexible piezoelectric material, and you can see here we have just put a tiny sensors on the skin. It doesn't affect any movement or activity, and it is able to measure the not really the heart rate, but the blood pressure wave, which is an important, very important, of course, information now for being aware of something going wrong in the body. Or in this other case, we are developing the same technology for monitoring swallowing for people having dysphagia or something wrong. So with an app that is controlling the signal, and eventually be in contact with the clinicians and the hospital. And these are activities done in cooperation with the European Space Agency for the monitoring in microgravity, the astronauts' physiological parameters. So just to conclude my talk and my vision is that the combination, once you produce new technologies, you also need to be extremely flexible in the packaging, in the interfacing with the electronic board, in producing the device on 3D, and the convergence of on one end, 3D additive manufacturing with different materials, with functional materials, together with the capability of control materials and devices at the nano and micro scale, is going, converging. And ideally, one day, 3D printing will be able even to go down to in 3D to the micro and nano scale, so that in principle, it will be enough additive manufacturing to produce exactly what you want with the functions, properties of the materials and device that you need. At this stage, in our center, what we realized by having a nano dimension tool is that we definitely increase our maturity of the technologies. We went very up in the TRL scale, and this because we could embed the sensors into the PCB, fiber optic and electronic drivers all together. It's strange, packaging for flow sensors that are currently on the market, will be in the market in a few weeks. Biosensor can be designed and realized extremely fast, and even ultrasound, skin ultrasound devices that we are currently developing for, again, monitoring with ultrasonic waves, what is going on in real time in the body. So that's my talk. Amit, thank you again. I can give you again the stage.
Thank you, Massimo. I find it very exciting. And you just gave us a very deep and interesting overview of how the usage of 3D printing is useful for extremely advanced research related to all kinds of medical device. And it is research stages, I imagine prototyping. Now, I would like to address Jim and to ask you, Jim, a quick question. See that on the medical device, where the value is right now, which is obviously to enable the progression of research and prototyping. And in your space, which is more on the aerospace, what do you think, or where do you see the key focus areas of your customers in terms of requirements with the technology?
Yes, thank you, Amit. It's very interesting to see what Massimo says, because he's looking at particularly nanotechnology right at the other end of where we are. But even so, there is still the requirement for trace and traceability, but particularly through the supply chain. But to answer your question specifically, Amit, the key requirements in terms of additive manufacturing in, let's say, aerospace, space, medical, oil and gas, it is predominantly around a new normal in terms of traceability. But also it is in around being able to reduce inventory, as I think someone else on the panel spoke about a little earlier, because the need to, I think it was yourself, Amit, the need to have stock of millions of parts. If additive manufacturing can be done in situation around the globe, almost on a just-in-time basis, is a huge reason and a huge factor for consideration. Other factors are things like with design for additive manufacturing, or DFAM, it's the potential to reduce the number of components in an integrated solution from maybe even tens or hundreds of components into just one single component, therefore reducing cost and reducing the manufacturing lead time. The total cost of acquisition of a component is the key thing. So one of the challenges that people who are designing or production engineers in additive manufacturing is, it's not the actual component that is produced through AM. It's the whole total cost of acquisition when you take into account the processors, the subcon processors, potentially shipment and potentially shipping, or the cost of producing in situations around the globe. So we already have a situation now where in defense circles, Navy ships are looking to have additive manufacturing machines and plant on board ships around the globe rather than shipping parts around for aeroplanes. And then we move into some really interesting conversations about who owns the IP for those components. Okay, is it the aircraft manufacturer, or is it, let's say, the US Navy, who are replacing a part or creating a replacement part, or is it indeed whoever received the file transfer, who owns that IP? So some really interesting conversations around that. And touching on that, file encryptation, secure file encryptation. So we already have in process with my company partnerships that allow a build file to be sent to any specific machine around the world, and only a certain number of components can be produced only on that machine, only on that serial number, even with only a particular person to agree that. So there are all those sorts of things that come into consideration, but essentially it's designing for things like weight loss but strengthening, designing for the potential to replace tens or hundreds of components with one component, which does happen now. And it's about the possibility of reduction of inventory while still being able to scale up in manufacturing. You touched on it, Amit, I think yourself. The big challenge for everyone now is taking this R&D phase into production that's scalable.
Thank you very much, Jim. You have touched so many points that I'm not even sure where to start, but I will say one thing. I think it's clear and it's acknowledged cross-wide, regardless of whether it's AM or any type of manufacturing, that the world of manufacturing that over previous decades moved east, mostly to China and other places where manufacturing was cheap. And we saw how manufacturing moved into huge hubs, wherever they are, is changing. And we see that the understanding that for certain parts or for customized parts, there is this new need to act quick. And it's not just always about the numbers and quantities. It's also about being able to react where the term high mix, low volume, or customized solution, but right here, right now, becomes a strong need. And I think that some of the examples that you gave align with the term distributed manufacturing. You might have a centralized operation. It could be Boeing, it could be the US Army. And they need answers or solutions elsewhere from where the official large hub is. And I think with that comes the need for flexibility and agility with the manufacturing means, and also the other issues that you mentioned, such as traceability and being able to go back and to understand what happened, where, and how. Now, with all of that in mind, I'd like to address you, Itamar. So you are in the business of, I would say, artificial intelligence, because the solutions that you develop help your customers to take the right decisions and basically improve their yield, save time, become more effective. So what do you believe are the key focus areas of the 3D printing technology to enable its adoption and scale up, which is still not something we can say 3D printing is accomplished, not yet. So what do you think, what the focus area should be within the manufacturing world?
So thank you, Amit, and hello once again. So I believe that it's actually start with automation. AI, it's of course a big buzzword, but when you're trying to automate processes, when you're trying to understand how to scale or to streamline expertise, you are looking for automation. And if we take it a few years back, I'm a third generation in the printing industry, not additive manufacturing, the printing press, but when we discovered additive manufacturing during digital transition in our family-owned company, we find it very complicated when we want to streamline those processes. And actually, when I approached to my father back then, I told him, it's pretty complicated to print. It still required expertise. It still rely on few software solutions, and it's actually pretty complicated. And he told me, 30 years ago, when I want to print a regular 2D document, I had to use the assistance of few software developers until small company at the States developed the PostScript, which is the driver or the network protocol between the computer to the printer. So it's very small company that's called Adobe, but that actually standardized the printing workflow. And with that, you got adoption of high-end printing or high volume printing, and also, of course, entry level. So you are closing the loop from A to Z. And I believe that now that 3D printing or additive manufacturing become much more mature, we see more variety of materials. Now is the right time to develop automation. And this is actually what we are doing. And we see many companies that are looking to adopt 3D printing on large scale. And you just mentioned distributed manufacturing. It's actually that, because when you're having a few plants worldwide and you want to verify that all the parts are producing in the same way, whether it's in different environment conditions, different materials, or printers or machines, you still need them to be identical as possible. And when you're looking all the guidelines or the pillars that companies like DNAM and other capabilities that are relying on the vendor side are compelling to each other, are complementary to each other, you are actually being able to achieve that automation. And our, I may say, main pillar is actually we are automating or trying to adopt those expertise, relying on heuristics and trying to streamline that to other operators in different level of expertise. And I think this is from, I can say from my end.
Thank you, Tamar. Yeah, I agree. I think it's extremely exciting. You gave the example from the world of software, which of course you're well familiar with. And although the whole concept of computers and software was new 30, 40 years ago, already we started to see the adoption of the digital world, right? You mentioned Adobe, and I think it's fair to mention that in the world of manufacturing, lots of other companies took their place, like SolidWorks and Autodesk and Mentor Graphics, which is today Siemens, and et cetera, et cetera. And in a way, I believe that the transition from a world which is already digitized in terms of on the design side into the adoption of decision-making, follow-up, and manufacturing as well, speaking of AM or AME, is something that it's not that it will happen, it is happening. It's just interesting, and I'm curious to see which of the different paths, and there's so many, is going to move faster forward. One example is how, although 3D printing on the mechanical side started with polymers mostly, we saw how in recent years metal took on so fast, and suddenly we see so many factories using different types of metals in production for complex parts. And then now we see more complex materials. And in our case, we see how our customers are starting to use nanomaterials in order to 3D print electronics components, which is yet again something different from mechanical parts. And there's so many elements coming together. Now, with that, I'll get back. I want to return to Professor Massimo. And Professor Massimo, I'm familiar with the IIT, the Italian Institute of Technology, with the vast range of activities. Perhaps you would like to share with us a couple of one or more use cases where you can point out the role of 3D printing and how you foresee this type of technology is being adopted by industry in the future.
Oh, yes. Well, First of all, let me say that we consider 3D printing and the additive manufacturing is not just a different way of making things. So the point is that this is really an enabling technologies, and it allows us to produce something that is not possible otherwise, and is bridging, as I said before, the different levels of the electronics from the board side that your machine was designed for to the micro nano sensors, which is something on which we work. And it is not just because of the structural component that is possible, but as I said, as the function. However, in IIT is a quite young institute. It was established only 15 years ago. And the idea was to produce a research center, a research institute in Italy, which has now about 1,600 people all around Italy, for improving innovation, helping industry. And in the entire network of IIT, we work not only on micro and nano devices, but also on different scale devices. For instance, we work in robotics. We work in exoskeletons. We work in prosthetics, and additive manufacturing is being exploited actually to produce prosthetic hands and to have a fast prototyping from design to the first prototype of the prosthetic hands in really days or weeks, which is also considered to be a solution for producing an ad hoc prosthetics for an arm for different people must be different. And it's a way of producing high-tech technology which is actually designed for a specific arm, for a specific person. You cannot produce something like this on large scale. You have to be fast, and you have to be exactly matching the person that you are targeting. So I think really the additive manufacturing is being a revolution, and even in research is something that is enabling even smaller research center to be able to produce on their own even small tools for research, or entire parts, or bridge the gap between the micro technologies and the system. So I think that in our field the effort will be more and more in developing new materials with traceability, whatever, but new materials because each application, each device that we develop needs a specific property of the material in terms of dielectric for antennas, in terms of flexibility and biocompatibility if applied to the and biocompatibility to be environmental friendly. So, or even biodegradability. So it's actually this heterogeneity that is really being possible by these technologies. And if the will of operation of the additional manufacturing can go even down to a smaller scale, that will further revolutionize our number of different sectors.
Okay, thank you, Massimo. And before I will comment on what you just said, I would like to invite the audience, whoever has a question is welcome to share it on the chat of this call, and we will try to address it. Now, with that, and I think the three of you at least know me, and I am a big advocate of additive manufacturing and 3D printing, but I'm going to put my devil's advocate hat And I'll say the following thing. So with all those great things happening, and with great respect to research and prototyping and customized solutions, we still, I mean, if you're honest, we still don't see the additive manufacturing and additive manufacturing for electronics yet becoming part of the mainstream. If I compare this to the print, Itamar, then okay, 30 years ago, print was not so digital, but today we see how everywhere the machines are digital and printers are digital printers. But 3D printing is out there for now almost 30 years, I think, since the early days. And we still don't see it as a mainstream activity. And I want to ask you, maybe I will start with you, Itamar, but what are those pain points that you see in front of you that prevent 3D printing in general to move faster and take a bigger portion of the mainstream world of manufacturing?
So thank you, Amit. So from my perspective, we are still lacking with the applications. And it's not because they are not out there. Actually, the COVID-19 provide many new applications and create new awareness for additive manufacturing. And the ability to identify those parts or those applications that could be used by additive manufacturing, whether it's for small for short series production or customized production, still required a lot of efforts, huge amount of efforts in order to validate whether they are printable or not, or better to say manufacturable, because there are some printability methods that can allow you to do so, but it still required a lot of efforts. And when you are catalyzing or trying to automate all those validation processes, which are consist of software solutions and also machines that can produce those parts or those even electronic parts on demand, this is something that can definitely is required in order to do so. So I understand what you're saying, I hear you, and I agree with that. And this is from one perspective still challenge, but this is the opportunity for us.
Thank you, Itamar. Now, they're telling me that we really have just like 1 minute. So I will ask Jim to give his summary bullet from his perspective on this conference, and then each one of us can give one final sentence to conclude. Go ahead, Jim.
Yes, thank you, Amit, and thank you, everyone. Interesting conversation. Thank you. I'd summarize by saying that from everything that I've heard today, I think there are three things that we need to all address as an industry, and that is education, in terms of we have thousands of engineers that still come out of university being production engineers in the old ways, and not so many yet in additive manufacturing and 3D in terms of scalability. Certainly in terms of R&D, fine. Collaboration is the other thing, and the last one is accreditation, because all of the technologies that we've just discussed exist. Itamar was very right in saying many of the solutions exist currently out there. They just have not been put together, and it needs industry to collaborate to do that. So I'm not just talking about the collaboration of different solutions like mine or like Princess or Materialize or StreamX, although all these things exist, or SolidWorks, whatever. I'm talking about collaboration between technologies, which is something that Massimo has touched on really, because we need to collaborate in terms of both the types of material and the types of technology, and look at additive manufacturing in a different way to how it was being looked at before. And that is where I see the challenge, but the great opportunity. I think collaboration is the key for all of us to be able to make this scalable, I think.
Thank you, Jim. Now, Massimo, to you, your summary bullet.
Yeah, actually, what I see in my community, I cannot talk about industry, but what I see in my community is that this kind of additive manufacturing still not belongs to the standard technology, standard processes that are used for producing sensors, devices. So I think it will become soon one of the standard. On one end, people is too used to the previous technologies to change. So you always have, difficulty in changing your mind and changing your habits. But at the same time, on the other end, when even more materials, more flexibility will be possible by additive manufacturing and more functional, then it will be clear that additive manufacturing will be a key new technology even in my field.
Thank you, Massimo. And Itamar, your last bullet.
So I think that all of you pretty summarized it pretty well. I agree. I cannot say that better. Collaboration is needed. Collaboration among technologies from all the value chain perspective, starting from the software through, starting from the development and the research through the software up to the printing process and the post-processing. This is from my end.
Thank you, Itamar. I, of course, agree with everything that you fellows mentioned. And I think that in the context of Industry 4.0, the correlation between the different solutions around 3D printing and digitalization of everything is very clear. It goes shoulder to shoulder. And I agree. I think that we are in a process and we are seeing the results. So it's not about what will happen in the future. It's just a matter of to keep observing and to see how all those different parts moving together into a more digitized world of manufacturing. And with that, I want to thank you, Jim, Massimo, Itamar. It was a real pleasure to be with you here on this panel, and I look forward to our next meeting, hopefully face to face.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.